So that's just a few millimetres, maybe
Wow.
2.5 millimetres thick. I made this axe.
I was going to say it looked hand forged, so.
Yes, yeah. I made it at Gransfors in Sweden.
Oh, cool.
So it was a whole morning of bashing metal with a hammer.
It's a morning well spent, I think.
Have you done iron axes?
I haven't done an iron axe yet.
So the next thing to do is just flatten off the bottom so it will sit flat on my block. And then I'm going to start thinking about carving out the inside. Because it was in half and on the floor, I'm going to use this. I'm going to use this a bit later, and I might use a quarter of it, which is quite a big chunk. And I think I might make some big cups.
Okay.
A bit like that one on the table, but bigger. I'm going to probably aim to carve away the ends a little bit, so if there's any cracking that started there that I haven't seen, I'll be carving that off. So I'll just put a cross in the middle and then get the biggest round out of it that I can, I think. Right, so a bit smaller. I might go for one with handles on the ends to make it a bit different from what I would usually do. So that's probably a smallish eating bowl, isn't it, at that size? Or you could put some crisps in it, or your car keys, or a small change, or something like that. So I tend to do a few lines because the next part of the operation is quite brutal, and I want to have something to aim at, and then I'll probably will end up overlapping the inner line a little bit as I cut. And then I can then carve it back to the outer line for a nice round edge.
So the idea is you're leaving yourself just a little bit of optionality there.
Yeah,
you're permitting yourself
a bit of wriggle room. Yeah.
I dig it, man. I dig it.
I just need to wedge this in position now.
Just out of curiosity, are the holes in the bench hand drilled with an auger, or did you use an electric drill? Or?
Some and some, actually, yeah. If I'd had the right size electric, I'd have done it all with electric.
Yeah.
But some actually, I think they're all the same. Oh no, there's some smaller ones in here because I've got some holdfasts that I also use sometimes. Right, so that's pretty solid now. So the next bit is to just start hollowing the inside out a little bit. Not quite solid enough. So usually you'd use an adze for this, but this just speeds it up a wee bit. And what it does is it gives, so there's all this wood round the edge. I'm going to reduce it more. There's all this wood round the edge, but when you start using an adze, there's a space for you to knock a chip into, if you know what I mean. Apologise if any chips hit anyone. Far quicker than you'd be able to do it with an adze. And now I can use the heel to just get down into there a little bit as well. And the nose down into there. I'm not bothered at all about the finish. I just want to get rid of some of the waste. And if you've got the nerve, you can get it to within 2 centimetres of the finished depth, I would say. But any more than that, and you could put a shock through the bottom of the bowl, and later on find out there's a death crack in it.
Yeah.
thing is that the materials are quite cheap or free. So if you mess it up, you've got a bit of firewood. But if you keep pushing it further and trying to get more out of each bit, you can speed up your production time. And it doesn't matter if you mess it up, really. Just start again.
Yeah.
I mean, that's taken what, less than 5 minutes?
Yeah.
So I haven't invested much time into it really yet.
Yeah.
Later on, everything gets more and more slower and more refined as you go along, and that's when you don't want to mess it up. I think I'll probably stop. I always say that and then I carry on for a bit. It's the same with spoon carving or anything, isn't it? On a bigger bowl, you'd start going in like that by hand, but because this is quite a small bowl, I'm going to position the adze where I want it, just beyond that inner line, and then just use a mallet to follow it out a bit more.
The adze is hand forged too. Did you make that as well?
This is a Grand's Force adze, and if I'm honest, they're not very good.
Okay.
Because the angles are all wrong, and it's got an angle in here which makes it difficult to cut with. Found the handle uncomfortable, so I've ground lots off of it. Bits of handle and steel have all come off. There were some big bits here that got in the way, so I've just attacked it with an angle grinder. This is what we need to get rid of. These little axe cuts go quite close to the wall of the bowl, which is another reason for leaving a bit of wriggle room. Anyone else here carve bowls? No? Yeah. I've just started doing pole lathed bowls, and that's like witchcraft, working out how to do that. Practice makes perfect though, doesn't it? So we've got most of it out, and now I just want to see how deep I actually am in the bowl, so I'll use my ruler for that. That's pretty much touching the bottom there, so I can see that a bit of wood's about 7, and then the depth of the bowl is about I'm only 4.5 centimetres out of 7, so I've got quite a lot to play with there. I can take loads more out, and I can do some of it with the adze, so I'll carry on for a bit longer with that. But you can already see that the handle of the adze is sort of fouling up on the bowl. It's going to be quite a straight-sided bowl, this one. This is where we start getting rid of those axe marks around this side with this little bit of adze work. And that's the good thing about doing it like this, you can actually position it exactly where you want it. It's quite difficult getting your eye in to get the hit in the same place each time when you're swinging the adze. After this I'll probably move on to curved gouge. I can't quite get in there because that's in the way. Actually what I could do, which would be helpful, is just put an extra wedge in there and move it out away from, well, I could wedge it at the other end, couldn't I? That's what I could do. A lot of this is just juggling to see what works and where you can fit stuff. If I wedge it at that end I'll be able to get more. Or I'll just do that. Right. There's that knot. You know I found that knot on the bottom. That's that bit there. They can make quite nice features, those, so just have to hope that it doesn't affect the integrity of the bowl, otherwise it might be for serving crisps in rather than soup. So I think probably I'm going to move to a chisel now because it's quite a straight-sided bowl and I can't really get round that curve with this tool. I'm going to hit the mallet this time, but in a minute, once I've whipped around the whole outside of the bowl with this, I'll start just pushing the chisel and you get smoother cuts. At the moment, every time I hit it, I'm leaving a little ridge in the side of the bowl, and ideally you want a relatively smooth finish inside.
Makes it easier to clean, doesn't it?
Yeah, I quite like having like facets on the outside and also tool marks, something like that. That's just they're axe marks there. As long as you make it look deliberate, it kind of works.
It does have an aesthetic, yeah.
Yeah.
And then I'm guessing the reason why you carve the inside of the bowl instead of the outside first is it's easier to brace it while it's still a square.
Much easier to hold it. There are ways you can hold the inside to do refinement at the end. You can just screw a batten on here and then put the lip under and push down on the opposite side, and that will hold it. That's the sort of finish I'm going to hope to get at the end. Again, I'm just going to munch this out until I've got rid of the worst of it, and then I'll start refining it after that. Yeah, there's a head under the table. He's quite close to some sharp things down there. He'd probably be alright, but I wouldn't like him to stand on the axe. In a minute, this whole chunk's going to come out, I hope. Bit more out anyway. How long have I been going now? Do you reckon 15 minutes?
A little less.
20?
A little less than that, I think. Probably about 12.
Alright. Oh, you've probably got it on there, haven't you? Yeah. That could dry at a different rate to the rest of the bowl, that knot. So I might end up with a holy one. Anyway, you learn something new each time. That's it, yeah. So this tool's called a swan neck. It's a chisel, but it's very bent. You can get right round corners really easily with that. Anyway, it's looking more bowl-like, isn't it? Get rid of that axe mark. Right, that's it, that's gone. Just a little bit on the rim, but I'll have more work to do up there anyway. So this is kind of my final pass round, I think, now. I don't mind a few little facets in there, but I want it to be relatively smooth and without too many catches like the ones that it made with the mallet. The side grain's usually really easy and the end grain's quite hard to come round. Usually get a better finish on the end grain often. I'm using quite a lot of my body weight on top of that as well to push that through. Just get used to sharpening your pencil and you've got it sorted then, haven't you? I may end up not finishing this bowl. I'll do some on the outside in just a second, and I'll try and get to that knot and see what it looks like in the outer wall.
Oh, that knot was quite large. I couldn't see it from where you were looking.
Yeah, that's the problem with the bowl. Yeah, so it's quite dry and it's a little bit punky. So it depends on how. I mean, there's that. That's the only indication on the outside that there's a problem. So often a good thing to do at this point, apart from having a slurp, is to just do some markings on the outside of your bowl. I can kind of gauge where the bottom of the bowl is and just mark it round, And so I know not to do an axe blow into the bottom, because that would split it open pretty much straight away. I mean, it's quite tempting to just start hitting like so. It's far better to remove corners each time. So I can just start by, I'll angle it that way actually, taking off a corner. Take this corner off as well. It's good to kind of work systematically as well around the bowl. Got 4 corners off, so I'm going to take off the middle bit now. See, if it would have been like that knot, that would have been a nice feature, wouldn't it? In fact, that's probably the start of it, and it is the start of it, and it runs all the way down. But that's hard wood there, so quite soon I need to decide what my design might be on the rim, whether I'm going to have a little handle here or not. There's a crack running up there. I'm just going to take that off for starters, make sure that's not a problem. Yeah, I think that's probably all right. So I'm just lumping it off really, I'm not too bothered what it looks like, I just need to get rid of the waste.
Are you thinking of going for the handles or not?
I am, yes. I've done a few recently that just have a little point at either side. I'd say that's about the middle. A bit off middle that, isn't it? Now there maybe. So I'm probably just going to bring it up something like that. Okay. Have a little point, and then I'll put a flat on the end of the point. Maybe something along those lines. But it will evolve as I go along. I'll put a mark and I'll try and work to it, and then it might change. And also that's quite an easy shape to get with the axe as well. So. What can happen here when you're doing those heavy hits on a chunk that's on the end, it can make a breakout happen all around a growth ring, because this is the way the tree was growing, like that, and so you can see the growth rings coming around there, so it's quite easy to make a breakout happen as this end gets smaller and smaller, I have to start doing lighter and lighter hits. It's just practice. So I've got some chunks here that I don't want, so I'm going to focus on getting rid of those I think now. So I could probably start working a bit closer to there now. So when I'm doing more accurate hits, I hold the axe right up by the head, and I'm often just hitting into one spot on the bench, and then I'm moving the bowl to where I'm hitting. It's kind of like a guillotine, and you put the steel in and it cuts. So I move the bowl around a little bit just to get the angle that I want. There's still a big chunk that's really thick there. We're looking at about that thick still. What I tend to do is just store it in a sack, a paper sack with some wood chip in, and that just helps to kind of equalise the moisture content, I guess, and dry it more slowly. Dry it slowly, and it's more likely to work properly. I think that's about the middle of the centre of the bowl, so I'm going to just draw something to aim at here. Right, so I'm going to start working on getting the bottom surface, the kind of finished diameter, or near to it anyway, and just work round the bowl And cutting down the side grain is quite dangerous. You can get quite a big rip or tear happening there, so you have to just be careful on those ones.
How often do you sharpen your axe?
Actually not that often, because the edge is the right profile, and it's as much to do with, for me anyway, the shape of the edge as the sharpness. If I'm trying to do really accurate finishing cuts, I might sharpen it, but I haven't sharpened it for quite a while. Probably it's been a few weeks.
Is that a Bransford brook as well?
It was made there, but I made it there, so it's sort of, it is but it isn't, if you know what I mean. Yeah.
Fantastic.
It's the same weight, if you like your Grand's Force axes, it's the same weight as the carving, it's the big carving axe, the Swedish carving axe. I think it's exactly the same chunk of steel was used to make it.
Just noticing the axe seems to have, the axe head has a slight beard. Was that intentional on your part? So that you
It has a what, sorry?
a slight beard, the indentation, so that you
Oh,
can
there,
choke
yes.
up just a little bit
So I can
further.
choke up to it, yeah. Yeah, you can get right in there. This one's got a similar kind of, you can get your fingers right in there, and that's good for accuracy. All the edge is on one side, it's not really got much of a bevel on that side. The bevel's all on one side, so it's got a slight bevel on that side, but it makes it sort of sided, so it's a right hand axe, and it's useful for cutting down the grain because it's quite flat here. See, that's still quite hard.
So you're
there.
feeling right now to see how thin it is?
No, I'm feeling how hard that pit, because that's a bit of decay that's happening, you know, and it's come through to here as well. It's probably a dead branch that's, you know, at some point the branch has died on the tree and then it's engulfed it as it's grown, something like that. It's quite nice, isn't it, that little mark? So in a minute I want to be able to curve the sides up so it's got a bit more of a belly on it. But that's almost got it there, hasn't it? I don't really want a straight up, straight sided bowl kind of thing. I'm doing sort of slicing, can you see I'm doing more of a slicing movement?
Yeah.
It kind of leaves a cleaner finish as well. If you work along the grain rather than across it on the sides, you get a more reliable cut. The bottom's a bit wonky, it sits sort of at an angle, so I might try and straighten that up. I just think we said we're about 7, 6, so 6. That's quite thin there now. See how thin it is. About 6.3. Yeah, so because I haven't got much scope to flatten that now, because that's quite thin, I'll probably just flatten it a wee bit, just to get rid of those little cut marks that are there. And then any other tweaking of how it sits, I'll probably do on the rim, I think, because the rim's all wonky as well. That's the sort of thing I'm aiming at. So that's just a few millimetres, maybe 2.5 millimetres thick. Ideally, that wouldn't have happened, but you know, these things do happen, and you have to just deal with it.
From there, it would mostly just be a question of smoothing. You'd use sandpaper at
it's
the
a
end.
bit lumpy still. I'd do more refining with the axe to get these bits down. Probably the next thing I'll do is get the rim how I want it, and then I know where I'm bringing the sides to. So that would probably be the next part of the operation. But yeah, this is the bowl that you guys saw being made earlier on, and because it didn't work out because of this knot here, which is going to shrink at a different rate to the wood around it, it would end up being a hole. I decided to halve it just to see how the carving had gone really, and learn something from it, even though it's not going to be a finished product. It's good to just see, you know, how well you've done with getting the wall to a nice even thickness. So I think, yeah, that's pretty good really. Quite thin on the bottom, but we knew that, I think, while you were here. I'm quite pleased with the shape that I got in the end, and the wall thickness, so I'll remember that for next time. Yeah, that's about it really.
Thank you. Thank you so much for demonstrating that for us. It was a treat to see.
This is a piece of sycamore. and I split that earlier, and out of the other quarter here came this, which I've just wrapped up so it doesn't dry out before tomorrow. So this was about here in the log.
Wow.
So I've removed, as you can see, I've removed quite a lot of timber from that. By the time it's refined, it should be a lot better, much smoother to hold, and the wall thickness should all be quite similar as well. But as I was saying before, it is leaking at the moment through this end grain. It was literally pouring out. So.
Wow. Wow. I'm surprised that that much liquid can move through it that quickly.
Yeah. I mean, it can. It really can. It just drops out of it. Yeah. I think probably 10 minutes and it would have emptied itself of a pint of water.
Wow.
So this is something I do as my hobby, and also I sell a few bits and pieces as well, as I have done today, and it kind of fits nicely along with working for woodlands.
Yeah. Perfect.
So I can get out into the woods and scavenge a few materials from here and there, and yeah, it's always a pleasure to be out in the woods, as I'm sure you probably know.
Yeah.